Hello and welcome to Niche Snacks. Today we're going to be doing a deck showcase on one of my favorite commander decks I have in my arsenal. I discovered the idea for this deck while watching an episode of The Command Zone where Josh and the professor from the Tolarian Community College comes on and they kind of talk about like what does and doesn't work with their Magic YouTube channels and all that stuff, which I thought was really interesting. But in that conversation, the professor talks about doing a deck tech video on this mono red control deck that he saw somebody playing and thought was really cool, and nobody really checked it out. So I went and took a peek, and it was something that I really like. I'm always a control player at heart. So without further ado, we're going to be talking about Starke of Rath. Starke of Rath is a 2/2 for 1, a red and a red, and he can tap to destroy target artifact or creature, and then that permanent's controller gains control of Starke of Rath. So we're going to tap our Starke of Rath, we're going to blow something up, and then we're going to give them away. And that might seem bad at first, but the core gameplay revolves around a lot of different ways to either copy Starke of Rath's effect with something like Battle Mage Bracers and Illusionist Bracers, or things to untap Starke of Rath so we can tap them again, like Magerite Stone and Thousand Year Elixir. And what we do is we will tap Starke of Wrath to blow up one of our things like Darksteel Citadel, Skyclave Relic, Darksteel Ingot, Workshop Assistant, Solemn Simulacrum, Mycosynth Wellspring, Ichor Wellspring, Spine of Ishsaw, basically cards that we want to go to the graveyard or that are indestructible. We tap Starke, we target one of our indestructible things or something that we want to die, then we'll untap Starke and then tap it to target one of our opponent's things. So what will happen, and the way things are resolved, is it'll blow up one of our opponent's things. They gain control of Starke of Wrath. Then it targets one of our things. It doesn't blow up, but as part of resolution of the effect of Starke of Wrath, we regain control of him. So we'll just always get Starke back. That's always the game plan. And then we also have a homeward path. In case we don't have any of these other things, we can give Starke of Wrath away and then get him back with homeward path. And that's the core gameplay loop of like keeping our opponent's boards controlled, right? So we'll always be able to blow up one of their creatures or one of their problem artifacts or something like that, and then, control the game that way. The deck also has a couple infinite combos. There's only 2 of them, and I don't think I've ever actually won a single game with either of these combos. But we've got the Zealous Conscripts and Kiki-Jiki Mirrorbreaker line, where we use Kiki-Jiki Mirrorbreaker to tap and put a copy of Zealous Conscripts into play, and when it enters, we gain control of target creature, Kiki-Jiki, and then we untap that permanent and it gains haste. So then we can just tap Kiki-Jiki to make another Zealous Conscripts and go boop, 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 infinite that way. And then there's also the Heat Shimmer Dual Caster Mage combo in here. So the way that works is we play a Heat Shimmer to create a token copy of target creature, doesn't matter what creature it is. So with the Heat Shimmer on the stack, we cast Dual Caster Mage out of our hand, and we copy the Heat Shimmer, and we have the copy of the Heat Shimmer target the Dual Caster Mage that's already in play, and then it creates another token copy of the Dual Caster Mage that has haste, and we use that copy as ETB trigger to just keep copying the Heat Shimmer over and over and over and over again until we have infinite Dual Caster Mages that with haste. And it wouldn't be a control deck without fatties, right? Some of my favorite mono red fatties. Inferno Titan is phenomenal. It's a 6/6 for 4 and 2 red. It's got fire breathing, so you can pay a red and it gets +1/+0 till end of turn. And when it enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 targets. So it's just also constantly wiping the board of little creatures, keeping them out of our way so we can continue to crash in with a 6/6. I'm also running plenty of dragons too. I mean, it's mono red control. There's lots of cool mono red dragons, right? We've got Scourge of the Throne. It's a 5/5 flyer, 4 and 2 red, and it has dethrone. And whenever Scourge of the Throne attacks for the first time each turn, if it's attacking the player with the most life or tied for the most life, untap all attacking creatures you control. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So it'll give us an additional combat and untap everything we attack with that turn if we trigger its dethrone when it attacks for the first time. We've also got a Rhyme Scale Dragon, so all of the basic lands are snow mountains. So we have plenty of snow mana to pump into Rhyme Scale Dragon. It's a 5/5 flyer for 5 and 2 red, so it's kind of expensive. It's from Cold Snap before, you know, Power Creep really got a hold of everything. But still, we can pay 3 mana, one of it being a snow mana, and tap target creature and put an ice counter on it. And then it also says creatures with ice counters on them don't untap during their controller's untap steps. So we can just permanently tap down some creatures and then, you know, also continue to crash in and do my damage. Hellkite Tyrant, 5/6, flying trample, 4 and 2 red. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you gain control of that player's artifacts. Not till end of turn, just forever. And then if you also control 20 or more artifacts on your upkeep with this guy out, you'll just win the game. Drakuseth, Maw of Flames. It's a 7/7 for 4 and 3 red, so 7 mana. It's got flying. When it attacks, it deals 4 damage to any target and 3 damage to each of up to 2 other targets. So again, when it attacks, it's just going to be clearing the board of smaller creatures, so we don't have to use Stark to like control, you know, whatever dumb little blockers have been put in our way. Balefire Dragon, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, deals that much damage to each creature that player controls. So another way to just clear creatures out of the way and control the board. We've got some artifact creatures with Myr Battlesphere and Wormcoil Engine, both of them being pretty solid artifacts. And then also Myr Battlesphere will create targets for us with Stark. So if we don't have anything to target with Stark to blow up, the Myr Battlesphere will create those for us. And then Wormcoil Engine also, when it hits the graveyard, we make 2 3/3s, so it's still 6 power in play. One of them has Death Touch, one of them has Lifelink, and that'll continue to let us like control the board and prevent people from attacking us and stuff like that. We also have the combo of Handwear Battlements and Handwear Garrison. So this deck doesn't really have much for tutors. There's a gamble in here, and that's it for tutors. But it does have quite a bit of the red card draw, so we do kind of end up with these two in play pretty often. And I have flipped, you know, I have melded these together a couple of times. It does happen, and it is pretty cool having a 7/4 that makes 3 1s or 3 2s. I think 3 2s when it attacks. Yeah, whenever Handwear the Writhing Township attacks, you put 2 3/2 colorless Eldrazi horror creature tokens in the battlefield tapped and attacking. He's pretty cool. And then, not really threats, but Oleophant will tutor us out of mountain if we need to. We can mountain cycle it, or it's a 6/4 body with trample, and it'll buff something and give it trample till end of turn when it attacks. Siege Gang Lieutenant will make 2 1/1 goblins at the beginning of our combat step if we control our commander, and the whole point of the deck is to stick Starke of Rath in play and use him to control the board, so we should have our commander in play for most, you know, at most times, and he only costs 3 mana, so yeah. And then, you know, Siege Gang Commander also is making us creatures, which will give us more targets for Starke of Rath if we don't have an indestructible thing in play yet. And then, last but not least, we've got Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs. It's a 5/4 for 3 and 2 red. And it says, whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, if we are the defending player, you put a 3/3 red ogre creature token onto the battlefield unless that player's controller pays 3. So it's basically a red, what's the card I'm looking for? A red version of Propaganda or Ghostly Prison or whatever that people have to pay to attack us. And if they don't, we get to make creatures, which we can then use to block the creatures that they're attacking us with, or then we have creatures to slap back with when they attack us. We've also got a couple spicy enchantments and planeswalkers. It is a mono red deck, and I don't think any mono red control deck would be complete without a Blood Moon. I do have the fancy Blood Moon from the Secret Lair, but Blood Moon turns all non-basic lands into mountains, so it can completely hamstring our opponents on mana. And if we need to, it does kind of turn off some of our combos, because there's also a Valakut in the deck, which we'll come across later, and then this can also turn off Homeward Path. If that's our only way to get Stark back, we cannot play Blood Moon, and I have run into that a couple of times. I do love Blood Moon. I think it might be on the chopping block, but we'll see. The next video is probably going to be an edit of this deck, so And then we've also got Vicious Shadows. It's a 7 mana enchantment. This says whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, you may have Vicious Shadows deal damage to target player equal to the number of cards in that player's hand. Notably, it doesn't have to be the player whose creature died takes the damage. It's any player and anybody's creatures. So even if we're like killing off our own creatures, this will still trigger and we can still deal damage directly to our opponents. And then also with Starke of Rath in play, he's tapping to destroy creatures and or artifacts, so we always will have a way to trigger Vicious Shadows. And last in our enchantments, we've got Sunburn's Invocation. This card is an all-star. I mean, any deck that has red and is casting spells, Sunburn's Invocation is just so good. It costs 5 in a red, and it says whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is the spell's mana value. You may cast a spell with mana value X or less from among the cards revealed this way without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it gives us a free spell when we cast a spell. For the most part. I mean, if we're casting a 1-drop, we're only going to reveal 1 card, but if we're casting bigger spells, and we have lots of them, like Vicious Shadows and all of the other big creatures we just kind of talked about with, like Oleophant and Kazul, looking at the top 5 cards and just being able to dump a free spell is awesome. It's so good. And then we also have 2 Planeswalkers, both Koth Fire Resistance and Koth of the Hammer. Koth, Fire of Resistance, his +2 lets us dig a mountain out of our library and put it into our hand, so he's kind of like the red version of the Liliana that does the same thing, but for swamps. The rest of him doesn't really matter. The -3, he deals damage to target creature equal to the number of mountains you control, whatever. And then -7 is we get an emblem that whenever a mountain comes into play, it deals 4 damage to any target. That's okay. I mean, it's like a little bit of a pumped up Valakut. But then Koth of the Hammer, his big -5, the emblem is super, super good. But let's go over everything else first. His +1, you get to untap a mountain, becomes a 4/4 red elemental creature till end of turn, and it's still a land. Notably with that, it can just let us untap a mountain and then tap it again for mana, so it's a bit of ramp, or we can have a 4/4 creature to crash in with. The -2 will get us a red mana for each mountain we control, which is pretty cool. I mean, more ramp that way if we need it. But really what we want to build up to is this -5 emblem. It says, you get an emblem with mountains you control have tap. This land deals 1 damage to target creature or player. This will let us turn all of our lands into Tims, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, but really it lets you control the entire board. Late game, we have, even if we only have 5 mountains, we'll be able to tap all of our mountains and just deal 5 damage to something. That can help keep the board clear of creatures, so we're not, continuously being attacked. And then eventually it'll help us close out the game. Just being able to tap our lands and deal direct damage to our opponents is insanely good. We don't ever have to cast spells again after we pop this Koth, pretty much. And it almost feels bad using our mountains to cast spells instead of using our mountains to kill our opponents. Next, we're going to go into our card draw and tutor package. So first off, the only tutor in the deck is a gamble. It's 1 red mana, it's a sorcery. You can search your library for a card, put it in your hand, and then you randomly discard a card from your hand. I mean, so we can potentially lose the card we gambled for or whatever. That's just red for you. Next on our card draw journey, we've got 2 wheels. One is a Reforge the Soul, and the other one is a Wheel of Fortune. The Wheel of Fortune is obviously a proxy, but I don't have $500 to spend on a magic card. Both of these will let us discard, it'll force everybody to discard their hand and draw 7 cards. It's usually pretty good for us because we will run out our hand quickly unless we've got some huge fatty in it that's just kind of stranded there. So this will let us just redraw a full hand and keep going. And then with more card draw, we've got Faithless Looting, which is 1 mana to draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards, and it's also got Flashback. So it's more card selection than it is card draw because we don't actually net any cards. And in fact, we end up losing a card because we have to use the Faithless Looting itself. So we'll be down 1 card when we cast this spell and it finishes resolving. Tormenting Voice, as an additional cost to cast a spell, you discard a card and then you draw 2 cards. So this one does replace itself. It's a little better than Faithless Looting, but it does cost 1 more mana. In that same vein, we also have Thrill of Possibility. So we also have to discard a card, to cast the spell, and then you draw 2 cards. And then this one is an instant, whereas Tormenting Voice is a sorcery, but they're basically the same card. Then we've got Electric Revelation, so we'll also have to discard a card when we cast the spell. It's an instant, and you draw 2 cards, and it has flashback, so we can do it multiple times. Unexpected Windfall, we have to discard a card when we cast the spell, and it'll draw us 2 cards, and it'll make 2 treasure tokens. So this one will get us a little bit more than everything else. And then my personal favorite one is Valakut Awakening. It's also a land on the other side that'll come into play tapped in case we ever need it, but I almost never play Valakut's Awakening as a land because it is such a good draw spell. It's a 3 mana instant, and you can put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library and then draw that many cards plus 1. So it replaces itself, and it gets rid of the chaff in your hand that you don't want to play that game for whatever reason, and then it draws you more cards. With pretty much every draw spell we have to already have cards in our hand to use them, but I think they're all pretty solid, especially for red. Not having access to the blue draw spells, it's about as good as we can do in mono red. Up next, I'm going to talk about our removal package. So we have 2 sweepers, Blasphemous Act and Chain Reaction. Blasphemous Act costs 8 in a red, but its cost is reduced by 1 generic mana for each creature that's on the battlefield. So it can potentially cost 1 red mana, and it deals 13 damage to each creature. So that'll pretty much wipe any creature in play. If Blasphemous Act is not killing a creature, we have Starke of Rath to handle it, unless it's indestructible. Then we don't really have much of an answer. And there's also Chain Reaction, so it deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield. So having more creatures in play, Chain Reaction is going to deal more damage. It's great to drop it after somebody plays an Avenger of Zendikar or something like that just generates its own army. Chain Reaction will be a great response to that. And we've got some single target removal. Tundra Turmoil, since we're using snow lands, it'll deal 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you add a colorless mana to your mana pool for each snow mana you spent to cast this spell. So if we use all 3 snow lands to cast the Tundra Turmoil, it'll basically pay for itself in colorless mana. So it's almost a free spell in a way. We've got Skred, which is another snow related removal spell. It'll deal damage to target creature equal to the number of snow permanents we control. So just blow up a creature. It kind of sucks it only targets creatures, and we can't just, hammer our opponent for 10 for 1 mana, but kind of makes sense. And then we've got Electro Dominance. You deal X damage to any target. You can cast a spell with mana value X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. And it costs X and 2 red, so it'll let us blow up a creature, problem creature, and then follow it up with a big spell out of our hand for free, basically. And then, not damage-based removal, we've got Chaos Warp, just being able to get rid of any problem permanent and stuff it back into someone's library. And, sometimes they flip over something cool. Most of the time, they just flip a land or an instant or sorcery spell that they can't cast. And we've also got Reverberate, so we can copy an instant or sorcery spell. It'll let us deal with somebody trying to counter our spell. We can reverberate their counter and counter it back. Kind of the same thing with Tybalt's Trickery. It's our only actual counter spell. It lets us counter something that's a problem. And then in the same vein, Deflecting Swat is also pretty similar to a counter spell. Anybody that's trying to single target destroy our stuff, we can flip it around with Deflecting Swat or even change up a counter spell. One cool interaction with Deflecting Swat that you might not know about, what you can do as part of the resolution of Deflecting Swat is, let's say, I'm casting Electro Dominance, and somebody tries to counter it with just a straight counter spell. 2 mana counter spell. So while Deflecting Swat is resolving, it's still a spell on the stack. So what you can do with its ability is you can change the target from whatever it's trying to counter to the Deflecting Swat. And then what happens is the Deflecting Swat has now fully resolved. It goes off into your graveyard, and then the spell that you redirected to Deflecting Swat doesn't have any targets to counter anymore. So that spell will fizzle, and then your other thing will resolve. So you can use Deflecting Swat to counter a counter spell in that situation. So now we've got a bit of ramp. We've got Housing Refrain, which will add a red mana to our mana pool equal to the number of cards in target opponent's hand, and then it'll exile itself and put 3 time counters on it. So it's a repeatable, every 3 turns get a bunch of mana, potentially a bunch of mana, but it's cool. I think this is a pretty new addition to the deck. I don't know if I've even ever cast it yet. And then we've got Seething Song, which is just a 3-mana instant that gets us 5 red mana, so ritual effect. And then in the same vein, we've got Mana Geyser, which will give us a red mana for each tapped land our opponents control. Obviously, you don't cast it unless you're going net positive with your mana, and preferably like a big positive with it as well. I don't know if I would cast a Mana Geyser that made anything less than like 10 mana, unless I really needed it for something. And we've also got probably my new favorite addition to the deck, Magna the Horde Master. It's a 2/2 for 1 and a red. It's a dwarf berserker, and when you commit a crime, you make a tap treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn. And committing a crime is targeting our opponents with a spell or ability, or any permanent they control with a spell or ability. Starke of Rath targets our opponent's shit to blow them up. Another good thing with Magda is the Koth, the Koth of the Hammer emblem that lets our mountains tap for 1 damage to deal 1 damage to any target. So that's targeting stuff, that's committing crimes with Magda. So we can tap our mountain to ping something for 1 and then make a treasure token. So it's basically a bootlegger stash with both of those, which is pretty cool. We've got Burnished Heart, which can sack to go get 2 basics. Ornithopter of Paradise, which is just a Birds of Paradise as an artifact. And then all of our regular old mana rocks. So Soul Ring, Fire Diamond, Arcane Signet, Thought Vessel. One really cool one is Cold Steel Heart. It's a snow artifact, so if we do need snow mana for something and we are short on mountains or whatever, it can also come from Cold Steel Heart. And then we've got Ruby Medallion to make our red spells cost 1 less, Gilded Lotus to make 3 mana, and then Cursed Mirror, which is a clone. So when it enters the battlefield, you can have it become a copy of any creature on the battlefield until end of turn, except it has haste. So it's a clone, it's an as it enters the battlefield effect, which means it'll get any ATB triggers or anything like that. We can copy our own stuff, which is cool, or anything that's cool that our opponents have. And then we've got our lands. Shatter Skull Smashing, it's the MDFC, it's in the land on the other side. War Room, you can pay 3 mana and tap it, and then pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity, which is 1. So we'll pay 3 mana and tap it, pay 1 life, and draw a card. It's good late game if we don't have anything else going on and our hand is pretty empty. We can just use this to draw cards. Leave mana up just in case, our opponents think we have something and you're like, actually, just kidding, I'm going to draw a card with this now. Smoldering Crater and Forgotten Cave are both cycle lands, so if we need them early on in the game, we can put them into play tapped. If we draw them late game when we've got 10 lands and we don't want another tap land, we can discard them and draw a card. Ancient Tomb, which I guess will be a game changer, gets us 2 mana. Ghost Quarter, Strip Mine, and Wasteland are there to blow up problem lands in case we need them. I do actually have a real Strip Mine and Wasteland somewhere, but I thought these proxies were cool. I don't even know where they came from, honestly. And then a Valakut enters the battlefield tapped, and then whenever a mountain enters the battlefield under your control, if you control at least 5 other mountains, you may have Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, deal 3 damage to target creature or player. Then you can also tap it for red mana. So it turns all of our mountains ETBing into damage if we have enough mountains. And then speaking of mountains, as we've kind of already said before, they're all snow mountains. And that's pretty much the deck. If you like just a solid, no nonsense, no frills control deck, this one's perfect. I feel like right now it sits kind of right at the top of tier 3. Can compete with some tier 4 stuff if you can kind of counter whatever they're doing and control them and push them into the late game. That's where Starke of Rath really starts taking over. Just being able to control the board and then push, dictate the pace of the game is kind of what you're doing with Stark. Keeping the big threats off the board, keeping them from attacking you. A lot of times you don't even want to use Stark's ability unless you know where the person is attacking. If they're attacking you and you don't need to blow it up before there's some kind of attack trigger or whatever, a lot of times people will see the Stark out there and they won't attack you because of it. They know you can blow their creature up. So just kind of like let your opponents kill each other and then come in late game and actually, be like, actually, I have this Koth and I'm going to pop him and now my lands all deal damage. So I'm just going to take the game over that way, or, whatever you've got in play, you can use that to control out the rest of the board and just take the game over. Okay. It's not bad at all already. 6 cards. We've got, oh nice. This is actually a pretty sweet opener, not gonna lie. We've got an indestructible target for Stark right off the bat. So all we really need to do is find a way to untap him or copy his ability, and then we're going to start off with a Faithless Looting. Oh, whoops, we forgot to draw a card for our turn. Ha, oh my god, and we just got a Koth of the Hammer. Hell yeah. Alright, so we're going to draw 2 and then discard 2. And we can definitely discard this Strip Mine, and I think I'm honestly going to discard this Tundra from Oil. We don't need either of those, which I know those are the 2 cards we just drew, but it is what it is. The Snow-Covered Mountain, which is great. We can scred an early mana dork if we feel we need to, or we can hold it for later, but slowing our opponents down now would probably be a good idea. Play our 3rd land. I am going to... Oh, our 1,000-Year Elixir also untaps. I was thinking it just gave him haste, but I forgot it also did that. That's pretty fucking good. I think the correct move is to dump the 1,000-Year Elixir first in hopes that we draw another land. Come on. Wow, look at that. What a fucking boss. Alright, then we're going to go 3 mana for a turn 4 Starke of Rath with a 1,000-Year Elixir backup. What this is going to allow us to do is blow up 1 creature every turn cycle for 1 mana. Right? So what we do in this situation, the 1,000-Year Elixir is going to give Stark haste for his tap abilities. So we're going to tap Starke of Rath, target the Darksteel Citadel, hold priority, untap Starke of Wrath, and then tap him to blow up a problem thing that our opponents have. And if they don't have any problems, you wait for the person on our right to finish their turn, and then their end step, blow up the biggest threat, whatever it is. Just get it off the board so we don't have to deal with it anymore. What'll happen is, the way the abilities go on the stack is our target of Darksteel Citadel's on the stack, then we hold priority, we put another target in with Stark, and then it'll resolve from top down, right? Our Stark's ability to blow up our creature, our opponent's creature, will happen. They'll gain control of Stark. And then the ability that Stark has to blow up the Darksteel Citadel will resolve, and then we regain control of Stark from that. And then we go to our next turn. Ooh, got another land. Hell yeah. So now what we can do is cast this Koth of the Hammer, and then +1 our Koth to untap a mountain. So he goes to 4. And now we have a blocker and a way to blow something up. We have a counter spell if we need it. If things get out of hand, we can even Blasphemous Act if we need to, blow up the board. We've got a Chaos Warp to get rid of a problem permanent that we can't take care of with Stark, or if there's a second problem permanent that we have to get rid of. Ooh, Heat Shimmer. So we can create a token that's a copy of target creature, except it has haste, and we exile it at the beginning of the next end step. Yeah, I mean, from this point, we're pretty set. Unless somebody is really out controlling us at this point, or, they can overrun us at this point, we've got a pretty solid game right here. And that's a pretty good example of Nuts hand, honestly. That one was pretty fucking good. We didn't draw any big fatties or anything, so that can happen sometimes. We'll get stuck on 3-4 mana and have a 7-drop in our hand that just kind of sits there and stagnates. That could have gone a lot worse. Ooh, okay. We got some stuff. We got 3 lands, which is okay. We don't have any way to untap Stark or have a thing for Stark to target, which is okay. Hopefully we'll draw into it. We've got the Electric Revelation. That'll draw us 4 cards eventually. So yeah, let's play this hand. I think we can do it. Turn. Ooh, an Oleophant. Cool. Start with a mountain, and then I'm gonna mountain cycle the Oleophant like right away, I think. Let's just go put another mountain into our hand so we know that we have one. Draw for the turn. Ooh, a Fire Diamond. Nice. So play that mountain we just got, and let's play the Fire Diamond. Untap, draw. We've got a Valakut. That's a land. We'll play the Valakut, and then we can spend 3 mana to cast Stark, potentially, or the Electric Revelation. I think at this point, I kind of want to put permanents on the battlefield just in case. It'll kind of save us a little bit of health here and there, just to make sure. Ooh, gross. We drew a Koth of the Hammer. I'm going to play another mountain, so we've got 3 now. Oh, another fun thing we can do with Zealous Conscripts, if we don't have the Kiki-Jiki or something, we can Zealous Conscript somebody's creature, attack with it, and then blow it up with the Starke of Rath, because we control it, and if we control it, then we gain control of Stark afterwards, right? So that's an option that we have. You could also dump Koth and start plussing him in the hopes that we can use his emblem to take over the game. Or we could even just hold back and cast the Electric Revelation. And this is all dependent on board state and all of that stuff. These are just all of our options, right? We've already played our land for the turn. So I think really what we should do is cast the Electric Revelation, and we have to discard a card. That card is probably going to be Skred. That's the weakest of the ones that we have. We'll draw 2. Ooh, look at that. We got a Darksteel Citadel, so there's a target for our Stark. We'll untap, draw for our turn. We'll play the Darksteel Citadel, so now we have something to target with Stark in case we need to, when we find an untapper or a doubler for his ability. Then, now I think the correct move is to play Koth for 4, sorry. Then +1 Koth to untap this mountain that we used to cast him. And now we have 3 mana left up in case we need to dual caster mage or even deflecting swat something. If somebody's attacking, or not attacking, sorry, if somebody's trying to target our Koth or something like that, we can deflecting swat it and get rid of it. We can even potentially dual caster mage and copy something and blow something else up. But right now I kind of want to hold on to the dual caster mage just in case. Let's go to our next turn. Tap up blue draw. Oh my god. Alright, cool. We drew the Heat Shimmer. So that's an auto win in case, unless somebody has a counter spell. We cast the Heat Shimmer targeting whatever, it doesn't matter. And then the dual caster to make infinite copies, which we've already gone over. So there is that. Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty good. We just kind of randomly lucked our way into that infinite combo. It does happen. Like I said earlier, I really don't think I've ever won a game with Stark through infinite combos. Usually there's something else going on that causes us to either fire off one of those pieces early in case we, like, because we have to, or, you know, we use them to stay alive and stabilize until we can take control of the game. All right, I think that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please rate, review, subscribe, turn on the bell notifications, all that fun stuff. But most importantly, even if you don't do any of that stuff, I just hope that you'll share it with somebody. You know, copy the link, paste it into a text, and just shoot it out to your entire contacts list. Doesn't matter if they know anything about Magic, just get them to watch it. You know, maybe they'll like the sound of my voice instead of what I'm talking about or something like that. All right, guys. Have a good day. I'll see you next time. Bye.